All right.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening around the world. Thank you so much for joining us on a very important topic today at Global Chamber. I am Doug Brunke, founder and CEO of such organization. Thank you for participating today. We've assembled three experts on growth, and given the world situation right now, it's an interesting time to think about growth and expansion. All of us, many of us have been used to that for decades and decades and almost forever. And now we have a situation where markets are changing, people are home, total disruption of life and systems and businesses with the pandemic. So what to do? How do we navigate going forward? And so talking to these people who are so used to growth now over the last several weeks have been managing through with their clients with how to handle these next steps, we thought would be very helpful and instrumental for next steps for you. So today we're going to start with Lou Vassalotti. Lou is the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Globalization Partners. Lou is used to growth. Lou, everybody you've been dealing with probably for the last several years has been expanding globally, and now suddenly there's a lot of unknowns. And so Lou aptly is going to be speaking about navigating the unknown. Thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise today, Lou.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here, and I appreciate everybody who's on the call. If we can actually move to my presentation. Next slide. Next slide.
We recognize that guy.
There you go. There you go. So if you go back to that one there, yeah. So a little bit about my organization, Globalization Partners. We are a global employer of record, and we enable our clients to hire employees in more than 170 countries around the globe within days, specifically in countries where they do not need or want to set up, costly international subsidiaries. Basically, they identify the person to be hired anywhere in the world, and we will put them on our fully compliant global payroll and employment platform, shifting the burden of global tax, legal, and HR from their shoulders to ours. So that's our business. Next slide, please. So I found this quote from Mark Cuban, who's the owner of the Dallas Mavericks in the United States, and it's in reference to the virus. How companies respond is going to define their brand for decades. And if you rushed in and somebody got sick, you were that company. And if you didn't take care of your employees or stakeholders and put them first, then you were that company. And I think a little bit about what he's saying is, most companies, I think, work very hard and spend a lot of time focused on building their culture and brand. And what has happened with this pandemic has really created challenges for many organizations and opportunities for others. But specifically, no matter which bucket you fall in of those two previous categories, how you handle it will define you for years to come. And so let's go to the next slide, please. One more. One more slide, please. Thank you. So first, we all know that companies have shut down offices all over the world, and how you did in executing that, or how do you handle the transition to remote working? How long will it last? How do I transition back? Are all questions and actions that are looming on us and really require a lot of planning and execution. For Globalization Partners, we actually have colleagues that are all over the world. And for us, if you can go back one slide. There you go, thank you. So we have colleagues all over the world, and for us, what this meant is enabling our team to be effective from home as soon as possible. And so what it did require was over communication, a lot of communication, both individually to our colleagues, which means, managers reaching out to have individual conversations about people will handle how the transition would work, and then broad communication from our executive and leadership team on where the company was actually working to enable us to move into this newly remote world. It also meant putting in place a lot of new processes and technology enablement. And for certain parts of the world, this is not so difficult, but in other parts of the world, this can be really challenging, especially when a work from home type of situation is against cultural norms, or in places where connectivity is not so readily available. And so really how we've dealt with this is really requires a lot of attention for each company. We've all seen disruptions, overloads in supply chains, and I don't think there's a whole lot of explanation that's needed here, as we have all experienced challenges from both a business perspective and a personal perspective when it comes to just doing things that we've done pretty normally in life. I will say that in this challenging time, from a supply chain standpoint, that everybody is rethinking everything and finding new and innovative ways to deliver their services and products. Virtual meetings, countries, companies with in-person meeting requirements, the norms are changing quickly. I think virtual meetings are the new norm. I think that they are relaxing or changing previous meeting protocols. People are getting their jobs done as effectively as before, and in some cases more effectively. Meetings are becoming more personal. People share experiences, kids and pets pop into meetings. People share more personal information. And I think we are making those adjustments very well. And those will be continue to be trends. I think that will replace face-to-face meetings. And for some companies and some people, virtual meetings will continue for a pretty long time. As far as people are concerned, what we're noticing with our clients and our own company is that people are definitely stepping up. People are trying to think of ways to help their company be more effective, to help their companies survive, to help their companies be more profitable, and help them continue to build the brand they want in the face of the adversity that we're challenged with. So I think it really comes down to, with us and many other companies, how can we ultimately help our clients and our people? For us at Globalization Partners, it really means encouraging collaboration and new ideas. So internally, we focused on things like community service and helping our team cope with social isolation, with things like Zoom happy hours or Zoom talent shows, and sharing of personal experiences. For our clients, it's been all about how we help them now and how we help them through recovery. So we really focused on two things here. The first being building a knowledge base of information specific to COVID and the countries that we operate in, where information is available, so that we can help our clients move through this. And on our website, we've actually created sections, both on our landing page as well as in our knowledge base of country-to-country information with important COVID information. So that's really what we've provided, for them now. And then as we look to the future, what I would call for recovery, when our clients are ready to hire again, basically we have actually thought about what we provide as our core service and try to extend some help that they will need in rehiring their workforce or re-engaging their workforce. And so we have created some free services that are, associated with the hiring part or talent acquisition part of our business, and have made available some services like compensation benchmarking, applicant screening, and actually help with remote interviewing. So on this is, I think, the last slide. I'll tell you about each country is different, and each of our clients is different. And for Globalization Partners, we generally enable or help our clients in 4 specific areas: global expansion into new markets, global talent acquisition, hiring specific talent in specific geographies, converting contractors to employees to mitigate risk and build greater loyalty, and lastly, cross-border mergers and acquisitions where there are some number of countries with small headcounts. And not only is every country dealing with different things from a governmental standpoint, operational standpoint, but each of our companies are trying to accomplish different strategies and goals, and each of these situations need to be looked at differently. So we take a really prescriptive approach that when we're talking to our clients and understanding what they're trying to accomplish, how we can impact their effectiveness and success along the way. A lot of times the challenges are just due to governments being shut down at this time, and when they will reopen, travel restrictions so that people can't move from country to country. And sometimes when people are trying to accomplish certain things in countries, it requires in-person meetings, and those things can't happen in today's world. Companies are still hiring globally. Our clients are hiring globally. Where we really see a continued hiring in our business is with clients that have already been using our model, that they understand the effectiveness that we provide, and I think they took a pause when COVID hit in our part of the world around mid-March, but quickly determined that this will pass, and that it was important for them to keep a moving business forward strategy going, and they have been doing just that and continue hiring at a fairly regular pace. So some things are definitely moving forward for us. And then I think the last thing I'm going to touch on, and then we'll obviously have a Q&A at the end, is in the wake of this pandemic that many companies are distressed and finding it really difficult or impossible to survive alone. And that all indications that we are seeing is that there will be a significant increase in investment and acquisitions over the next 12 to 24 months from a private equity standpoint. And this is one of the ways that companies will be able to rebuild their business and brand. That is my conversation points for today. I thank you all for being here, and I will transition over to Matt Mann, our next presenter.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lou. This is back to Doug. I failed to mention that Lou is based in the New York metropolitan area. Globalization Partners is headquartered in Boston. And as he mentioned, and as their website points out, they handle employment and payroll and HR issues in 170 countries. So they are extremely global. So thank you so much, Lou, for that information. I'm now going to switch over to Matt. Matt, coincidentally, is in Boston, where Lou's company is headquartered. Matt Mann is the head of business development and resourcing at reesmarx, which has hubs around the world, but they've got some significant locations in London and Charlotte, and they also operate all over the world. Unfortunately for Matt, or maybe actually it's probably a good thing, he is a Boston sports fan, and as myself being a Yankees fan, he's probably feeling pretty good that the Red Sox aren't losing to the Yankees right now. So the pandemic does have some positive impact. Matt, thank you so much for sharing your information today. Sorry about the bad joke.
That's all right. I'm used to it. We've had a pretty good run over the past 20 years across Boston, so I can take it with all the rings that we have. So that's fine.
You're a,
and,
thank you.
and Doug, actually, I am actually located in Charlotte, North Carolina. I originally am from Boston. Moved down here about 7, 8 years ago to join reesmarx, but I'm up in Boston quite often. So definitely still consider that somewhat home. So, all right, everybody, I'm going to share my screen here. All right, that should be on now. So as Doug mentioned, and Lou, thank you very much. That was great to hear from that. So I work for reesmarx. I run business development for North America. Really been at reesmarx, we've been helping companies for over 20 years expand internationally. The main hub of what we do is talent acquisition. Quite often we're working with small to mid-sized enterprise clients from 50 to 1,000 people as they're opening new markets, navigating that global expansion that Lou spoke about. How do we get into new countries? How do we find the right talent? And making sure that they fit, both from a skill set as well as a cultural set. As you can imagine, with everything that we're doing from a talent acquisition standpoint, the world, as Lou said, from a pandemic standpoint, has gone in many different ways. Thought a lot about how I wanted to start this presentation, and kind of thought a small story of where we were as a company the day that the US banned travel. I thought would be really appropriate to see where kind of a micro story of where all of our clients' mindsets have been, really over the past few months. So our company, reesmarx, the Wednesday that that the travel was banned from the US, where everybody was told if you're out of the country, you have to get back. We were actually all in Portugal as a company on a retreat, planning for next year, planning growth, planning strategy, great celebration time. We landed that Wednesday. Had a great day. Got the tour, learned a little bit more about Portugal culture. Had our team from London in, our team from Singapore in. It was a great day. That night, fortunately, and this is kind of a story we're all laughing at this point, I was asleep at this point, and the president came on and said everybody has to get back. Well, a lot of people on our team panicked, went to the airport, tried to get home. It was chaos. It was 2 a.m. It was really hard to understand what was going on. Kind of this immediate reaction, right? Panic. What are we doing? Eventually, nobody could get home. It was too crazy. Airports couldn't function. There was no information. I wake up the next morning to about 75 text messages, voicemails, people concerned, what's going on? What are we doing? And as I go through this, as you can imagine, right, the panic, oh my God, I'm never going to get home. Well, you take a step back, you take a deep breath, you realize, okay, what can I do today? Well, I can't get on a plane. There's no planes leaving, right? I can't make a phone call. I can't get anywhere. What am I going to do? You assess what you need to do. We figured out, yes, we are going to be able to get back as scheduled. We can leave Saturday. It's going to be great. All right. So what do? We enjoy the rest of the time that we're there. We make big plans. We understand what we're doing. And then we get on a plane Saturday. We get back to the United States, fly in, actually got through the airport pretty easy versus all those people who rushed back Friday and Thursday and had to wait hours and hours at the airport. It's an interesting story. It's a little crazy, but the reason I bring it up is we've gone through since March, since we've gotten back, we're dealing with clients, just as Lou had mentioned, that had that same reaction when everything hit. Panic sets in. What do? Put all the jobs on hold, right? Put all the jobs on hold. We're not hiring. We gotta not spend money. Then start to realize what's going on. Everything starts to settle. And now we start to put in strategy and planning as we go forward. And now people are taking action. As Lou mentioned, clients right now are stepping up. They're figuring out ways to do business. Remote has been just a wonderful area. So that's just a kind of a quick story to get us started here. Promise not to go too long. I only have a couple slides today. So there we go. All right. So one of the biggest things that we're starting to talk about is growth. How do we grow? What are we doing from a hiring standpoint? All right. So really what I'm going to look through is kind of three things that we're seeing from clients. You know, are we hiring for now or are we hiring for the future? I think there's a lot of companies right now that are thinking, all right, what do we need to do right now? But I think everybody needs to make sure that we're also starting to think about our future hires. And there's many different reasons for that. Planning. So the first thing that we're doing as a firm, as a recruitment firm who spends, now to give you kind of some insight, our firm really works with companies that are having strategic leaders being placed in countries where they don't have a presence. So a lot of the times it's going to be, you know, a US based company trying to get into Europe or Asia, South Korea, Japan, Singapore, across Europe, South America, Latin America. And we're trying to help them find strategic leaders that are going to be able to expand their business and grow revenues in those regions. So they're starting to look at how do we do this over the long haul. Immediately, we had clients who had interviews in process when March hit. What they had to make a decision, are we still going to make these hires? Are these important enough to make the hire? So we sat down with our clients to strategize of what do we need to do, what's important. We've had one client who's a major franchise business that was expanding into the Latin American market. We had two candidates at offer stage when all of this hit. They still want these people. They know they're going to need them long term, but they want to make sure that they're able to bring them on board appropriately. Their strategy that we helped them devise was, let's get offer letters and contracts out to these candidates to solidify their candidacy, but we're going to make start dates delayed, right? And before we get that commitment. That works when people are employed. Other times, if people are not employed and you want to bring them on, you might have to try to push them ahead. And as Lou mentioned, with Mark Cuban's comment there, with Mark Cuban's quote, are you known as that company that hired somebody when they were at their lowest, when they needed it, and you put their needs ahead of yours? Or how did you deal with that strategy? So there's been lots of things that we've been dealing with, planning wise, other things that we've seen, the remote workforce that has become just an absolute need, a necessity. And it's been very interesting. Our firm, in particular, our US side of the business has always worked remotely. It's been a very simple transition for us. Our London-based team has been more office-based, and they've learned that they're able to get more done in general, working from home. So there's going to be sort of a hybrid model as we come back and as we plan through this. In particular, one client that we just started speaking with, they're about 200 people in one office in the United States, have never worked remotely. So they had a scramble to transition to this mode. It's actually a company that's growing still. They've always been a technology that has still a huge need at this point. They've taken this opportunity to reassess, how do we keep the culture that we built for 13 years? How do we keep that from a remote standpoint? With that, they're also now trying to look at, how do we expand globally? They have opportunities across the globe that typically their sales reps would fly over to. Now we've sat down with them and started to look at, where do we go in Europe? Where do we put the right people? Where do we go in Asia? That's going to be the most advantage to your company. And they're starting to grow and hire from that perspective. So really interesting. I think everybody would recognize that most pipelines have shrunk. But what we're finding with companies that are still looking to grow, it may be now, it may be later, they're really looking for us to understand a good strategy. What is the strategy to deal with the now Now that we're settled, what does the strategy deal with the later, especially when we don't know exactly what it's going to look like later. Kind of second point, and my third point kind of run together, and I know I'm kind of running a bit on time here, but so I'll kind of put 2 and 3 together: mindset and decision-making comfort. You know, there's really kind of 2 major things within this that we need to make sure that our clients as a recruiting firm understand, right? So we work for a client, they're trying to hire people. Most of our clients are looking for A players. You know, they're looking for someone who's going to come in with a book of business, has a skill set that's going to make a large impact on their company. We're finding if you're still looking for that person, right, that strategic leader, that we call them that A player that's going to make a large impact on your company. A lot of clients are coming to us at this point and are essentially going, all right, there's all these people on the market. People are being laid off. Can we go get one of these people for less money? You know, trying to supply and demand, right? What we're finding, especially in countries that employment has always been tough, places like Germany, Japan, you know, even across the US, we're finding these really A players, you still have to approach them in the same way you would pre-pandemic, because they understand their value. They understand their next move is critical. Even if they're out of work, a lot of these people do understand that they are looking at their next move. Is this company going to be viable? What is the culture of this company? Again, as Lou mentioned with Mark Cuban, how did they react? Right? How did you react as a company? So being able to tell your story and get comfortable over video to get these candidates to understand we're not just trying to give you some money to join our company. We want you to make an impact, to be an impact player on our culture for the long run. So it's really all about making sure that we have that sort of mindset within you know, within ourselves to understand who we are as a company, what type of impact that we're making. And if we are looking to make hires and it is that sort of A player, we need a large impact player, we have to understand that the candidate's making as much of a decision as possible as you are trying to hire them. The final thing, and I think it's kind of an interesting, real quick story, I think we all need to get comfortable making decisions on video calls. A lot of times, so our business has always been, you know, a company either in the US or Europe, expanding to Asia or expanding to South America, expanding to the US from Europe. So quite often we would be aligning calls and video calls. Final steps were always, you know, usually a couple months away, where interviews were taking face-to-face in person. So what we would do is align these. So we have the benchmark candidates. We bring everybody into the end where, you know, you have those 2 to 3 options that you're meeting face to face. So it would always make, you know, scheduling, getting people to fly across the pond was always, you know, a challenge, scheduling. What we found now is our speed to hire is decreasing. You know, it's happening quicker because we can't fly, right? People that are adapting and learning how to build trust and be able to make decisions, just like we're all doing right now, talking through video and understanding who we are and getting personal and building that culture is really important. The final piece to that, I talked to one of my clients, I think it was yesterday, that it was kind of perfect timing. Closing a deal with a major Fortune 100 retailer. They did it over video. The major decision maker was sitting in their bedroom in sweatpants. Person probably making quite a bit of money. People are doing it. People are comfortable. I think if you're a recruiting firm, help your clients get comfortable making these decisions. If you're a client that has hiring needs, you know, really work to make yourself comfortable with this. It's about all I have today, guys. I could keep talking, but I think I'm out of time. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Looking forward to questions.
Thank you, Matt. Really good information. We've heard from 2 spectacular companies and two extraordinary people, Lou with Globalization Partners and Matt at reesmarx. And Sergio Cuellar, who's our third speaker and third and final, is a very different character, but equally extraordinary. Sergio is a consultant at Cuellar Enterprises. He's also an interim CEO. And why he's here is because of his history. He's from a very famous family within Arizona, especially around southern Arizona along the border. And he was one of the first, if not the first in his family to leave the family business and go out, and he bought a few coffee houses and he turned it from 3 to 113 now in Mexico. So he was cross-border, very successful entrepreneur, and now he's helping companies be successful. And so we thought that from his family business experience, from his franchise experience, and from his growth experience, Sergio has a lot to say at this interesting time. Sergio, thank you for sharing your expertise today.
Well, thank you, Doug, for your presentation and for the invite. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here and share my insights. For the last 9 years, after I sold my coffee bar business, 113, I was raised in Mexico City, by the way, so I do have a strong Arizona connection, but I'm much more connected on South America and Mexico. So after I sold my coffee bar business, for the last 9 years, I've been a business consultant, primarily in Mexico, but with some exposure in South and North America. A lot of these companies are, they share kind of cultural values as a lot of developing countries do, like in South Asia, parts of Africa, all Latin America, probably some in the Middle East. And what I find is, or where I try to help is with their company culture, the values. So being such paternalistic countries, or at least the companies I've worked with, you try to inject values of decision making within the team, teamwork, leadership styles, that for more developed countries might be a little bit obvious, maybe, but anyway, not for a lot of these paternalistic companies, that it's not that obvious. So I know there's a lot of work methodologies and a lot of leadership styles that give results. Today, well, having said that, today I want to share the work methodology I use for a lot of these paternalistic companies and how it improves in a positive way the performance in the workforce. I'm not really talking much about COVID-19 because I do more of this business consulting and anyway, just before I share my presentation, I always start with a diagnosis, and besides looking at information and the knowing the company and the policies and the internal reporting, I tend to first interview the frontliners and move my way up to the CEO. So it's a lot of interviewing. And when you do the interviewing, well, you have to prepare the questionnaires and you have to hopefully have them open up to you. And well, that's part of the strategy, part of the art. I'm not going to focus right now on my presentation on the good, which is a lot of it. And it's as important or even more important than the bad. It's easy to see the bad, but the good is a strength. And so having said that, let's go for my presentation, and I'm going to give you some examples of what I hear in these developing countries. Okay, there we go. So you try to get the feedback, or you get the feedback from their employees, and these are some of the examples that you hear from them. They notice that their clients are not completely satisfied. they consider their opinions that are not considered. They think they're working for the boss and not working for the customer, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll call that, how do I click here? Here we go. Voices, okay? That's what you hear. That's what the company's telling you, the people, the workforce is telling you. So the next phase is trying to interpret, why do they say what they say, or why do they feel how they feel? And that's, is it because of red tape? Is the company not very organized? Is it a lack of clarity? Are they not rewarding properly? Is it more of a people get promoted because of a personal relationship instead of merits, which that's very common in the companies I work with. So I will call that the possible causes, okay? So like I said, I'm just looking at the bad, not the good, but the good is also another strategy there where you're trying to understand the strengths. And after you do look at the possible causes, you try to see what defines the values that causes the causes. I'm sorry for phrasing it that way. Mm-hmm. But the values, which in the companies I work for, that culture, now we have to understand that shared values is usually what we define as company culture. So a lot what I find is that you don't take care of your colleagues sometimes as you in an institutional way. And if you don't, what makes you think you're going to take care of the clients? So I just put a little bit of ideas here, like investing in people is how you grow. It's a win-win relationship. And that's kind of what I try to explain to the top management of the importance of the values. Now let's see, it's stuck here. Okay, so company culture, shared values. So then that's when the work methodology I was mentioning kind of starts, or that's the breaking point. Is it necessary to have a new design in the company, or what is working, just try to improve it? So going back to the work methodology, first you do the diagnosis, which you saw. We start with the voices, the causes, what design they have. You look at the values, and that's where you if needed, you step in. You explain the new philosophy. Like I mentioned to Doug in the past, sometimes in cultures that have been working with certain set of values for so long, it's almost like talking Japanese and they understand Chinese. So this is where you have to be very creative in showing them that, I mean, it's pretty logical, but at the same time, it's changing the values. So after that, you have a new design. After the new design, that's when you start doing your business plan. Then I'll talk a little bit of how you treat, or how I recommend treating the workforce in these scenarios. And optimally, what you want is performance, right? To improve performance. That's probably the main objective. Just thinking about a business plan, and I wanted to put this slide because in many of the countries, and especially Mexico, and the companies I've worked for, very few actually have proper business plan, and some don't even have business plan. We're talking about companies that sell over 100 million in revenue a year. Last year was consulting a company that sold $800 million of revenue. It's a huge company, works in Central America and in Mexico. No business plan. I was very shocked, which it really does help. So just everything is made easier when the plan is straightforward and clearly understood. It helps to align the team, measure results, and compensate employees for success. So pretty much, I just put a little slide so we can get a feel of a business plan. So now talking about the workforce, it's three models. The first one is selection. And there's where you need to know exactly what the functions and the roles are and what type of person. Here you do have to look for sometimes a profile if they're going to travel a lot, especially in developing countries, is sex important, age important, etc. So that you start with the selection, and then you have to make sure the managers that are also involved in the selection know how to interview, what kind of questions they should ask. Not a lot of times they end up talking about their home city or whatever, some experiences or somebody they know, a mutual friend or whatever. So you have to stay focused on the selection. Then how do you integrate the people? How do you make sure they're happy of their choice of coming and working with you? So you give a presentation of your company history, what you do with the products, who works there, where they work, what they do, and you take advantage in what's internal regulations of the company, where the policies, and you're sharing the values at the same time. Then performance, which everyone in the organization, no matter where they are, has clear objectives. You try to make objectively your objectives. Sometimes it's part of criteria, and you always try to relate it with metrics. Then after that, that's when the company steps in and invests in the people, as an advice, as feedback seminars, as training courses. Obviously, you're evaluating. For companies that do not do evaluations in their personnel, I recommend it doing quarterly at first, so everybody gets used to it. Then you can do it maybe every 6 months or every year in some cases. And that is dependent on the rewards. We have to have the right incentives, and we have to be try to recognize when it's needed. And it's important, especially in some of these cultures, that we take the fear away from failure, which it's an important step there. So sometimes you have to celebrate failure, and which that's another seminar by itself. But anyway, hopefully you get the picture.
Sergio, it's interesting that you bring up culture and values, because all three of you have brought that up as a common thread and such an important thing, especially at this time of crisis. Could you take 30 seconds and just wrap up, and then we're going to need to get to questions?
So this is the last slide, and just as work phases, we talked about how to, what you need, information, feedback, etc. The diagnosis, what I call. Make sure you know your competitive advantages. You have to have a mission, vision, values in place. That's the design, and then you educate. So, like you look there, it's one step at a time. There's no shortcuts here. So then you educate, and that's where you do with the workforce, where I just said, process and discipline. And then once you have that, or at least in my book, that's when you start talking about innovative ideas, and that's when you start talking or really getting the performance part. So hopefully that helped. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
It does. Really appreciate it. And I failed to mention that in between all of your family business, you actually worked for some big companies like Sunkist, and I thought that was a really interesting part of your background, because those end up being a lot of the times people that Globalization Partners and reesmarx work with. First question for Lou. Lou, are you seeing any specific regions globally that are more active than others at the moment in terms of the work that you're doing? And let's make sure you're unmuted. Are you there? Lou, are you there?
Oh, Lou, you're still on mute.
Let's see. Oh, he's talking, but
he's not muted, Doug. There's probably something with his audio.
Uh-oh. Okay. We can't hear you, Lou. Sorry.
But guys, while Lou's trying to get that worked out, just from our perspective, the hires that are happening and getting offers out quickly tend to be in the Asian countries. a bit
Okay.
more. They seem to be a few weeks ahead of us, considering they kind of started earlier on from the pandemic side of it. We've actually had closings in South Korea, China, Japan, in the last couple of weeks. So that seems to be where they're moving fastest overall, but we have things kind of going across the world as well.
Is that on the higher side, you're saying?
Yeah, so on the hiring side, when clients are actually finally making that final decision to get an offer out, to get people actually hired and working again, they're making we've had more placements in that region this last probably 4 weeks than we've had other spots.
Okay, and what does that look like? Are they strategically thinking about the future, or are they kind of redesigning based on downsizing? What do these hires look like? It's probably a mix, but what generally are you working with?
Yeah, it's a mix, and I don't want to steal Lou's thunder if he's got his voice back.
I think I'm back, if you guys
There
can hear me.
To finalize that, our specific case, these were roles that were being recruited on prior to the pandemic. So they're just basically got that comfort that they're able to make their decision to bring somebody on board.
Okay, and they kept moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Very, very good. Lou,
Sorry
it's
about
great
that,
to
Lou.
have you back.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought my phone cut off, which is embarrassing in a meeting like this. But anyway,
No
so I'll take two points of view. Like for us as a company, we were actually our history is we're about 8 years old, and have been primarily U.S. outbound focused. And our expansion plans this year were to move our sales and marketing footprint into Europe and also into Asia. We had Europe before Asia, and what coronavirus did was kind of shift that a little bit, where we accelerated our Asian plans because the recovery in that part of the world was happening sooner than the European market. So for us, I think if you're setting up a business per se, that parts of the world like Asia are going to be ready for you to kind of be more productive than other parts of the world that are, later in the process of dealing with COVID. From an individual client hiring perspective, if you think about our businesses, we basically enable companies to hire individuals, usually local nationals, in countries that they don't have entities. So it means usually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 employees, and most of them are remote. So in our situation, our clients are still hiring all over the world because they're basically hiring a remote employee or a virtual employee. So it hasn't really limited their ability to execute and our ability to deliver on their strategies. So that would be my comment.
Okay. Lou, while we've got you, Matt mentioned about clients delaying start dates. Have you seen the same thing, and how do candidates react in that situation?
Some clients are delaying hiring dates. We've actually even had some clients come over to us from competitors that have had difficulty in executing unemployment contracts. And I really don't think that employees want to wait, right? It's an uncertain time. And unless you have the luxury of, not working or not having a job, then, you're going to feel a little uneasy about, a delay in hiring. If that's your only choice, it is what it is. But we're seeing that that basically candidates want jobs, and they're going to look for somebody else if the person they're talking to initially can't make them that offer and give them that employment.
Got it. Matt, how about you? What's your perspective of that?
Yeah, I agree with Lou. I think you need to really look at everything as a specific example. In general, if somebody's out of work, they're not going to wait. It's just too hard for them to do that. So you have to weigh the risk reward as a company. If you just can't physically get that person on board because you either need to hold your budgets frozen, or there's just certain strategies that that you're willing to risk losing that candidate, then that's what you have to do. In our specific case, you know, a lot of the times where the people that are taking these job offers are still gainfully employed, fortunately. You know, so really it's come down to, you know, us as a firm getting to know our candidates well enough to kind of see, are they willing to wait? Did they, because everybody understands this is an unprecedented time at this point. And they understand there's an advantage on both sides to waiting, although nobody's happy about that for sure. So I think in specific circumstances, it's something that you can do. Certainly not ideal, but really it has to be that perfect storm of the person's employed, willing to wait. You kind of put a plan together, and then, you know, to be honest, you really have to put a plan to integrate that person into your work life and make a connection with them, even before they start. So from a recruiting firm, we hold that with the candidate as well as the client, but we highly advise the hiring manager to make sure that they're constantly talking to that candidate to keep them engaged and keep them interested.
That makes a lot of sense. Sergio, in your case, I know you work with a lot of family businesses. You're in a family business, and you also work a lot in Latin America. How are you seeing this? And given people's values and cultures and what you talked about earlier, is one of the values for a family business that at times like these, they would cut back and keep the family members in and dispose of the people who are not family? Is that a way some businesses are actually reacting now?
Depending on their financial situation.
Okay.
Maybe one of the advantages of paternalistic culture is that they treat a lot of their employees like a parent. So that's where it comes from. So they're very much aware of not only their employees, but of their families. So it's very, so that helps. They actually, they'll lose sleep if they have to get rid of a lot of the people that have been very loyal to them. But if resources not permitting, or if they think it's going to be very difficult to jumpstart their business once this is over, well, then it's not want, but it's just not a possibility.
That makes a lot of sense.
Again, they'll be very keen to try to really keep it as a family, all the employees.
Got it. So it's the family, the extended family, their
It's
own
extended family, and that's the way they're treated. And I didn't get into it, but they treat them more like adults, you know, like kids, because they're not involved in much decision making in a lot of these countries. And I want to, Argentina is a little bit different, so is Chile. Okay, so it differs from place to place.
Okay. Another question, this one for Lou. Do you have a view on specific industry sectors that have been less affected? In fact, potentially, you know, on the very high side. We just did a blog post on the hot markets. In some markets, they can't supply enough, you know, personal protective equipment or hand sanitizer or a variety of other things. Where are you seeing those things happen right now?
I mean, for us, I think we're seeing that, you know, certain industries or market segments like, you know, technology, you know, software, life sciences are being much less affected by COVID than obviously high production manufacturing companies that, you know, you have to have people using specific equipment in a certain space, or, you know, your retail or hospitality businesses. And, you know, I mean, here in the United States, we all know that just about everything is shut down, and where those particular companies are affected. And I'm sure that's a global picture as well. For our business, it's a lot of what we're doing are, you know, technology professionals, life sciences, people that can operate either remotely, or there's an environment when we get back to work where they'll have distance, that they'll be able to operate, you know, space between them and other coworkers. And then that the companies also have the ability to put the, you know, personal protective gear or sanitization of the workplace, and new processes in place. So the obvious stuff is manufacturing and anything that's really labor, people intensive to a specific company, location or activities have been greatly affected.
Matt, I bet you're working really hard on some significant hires where people are growing.
Yeah, it's to kind of touch on what Lou said, it's the industries we're seeing that are growing. It's really those companies that are, really twofold. It's one that's that sort of technology based that have gone into the digital world or e-commerce world, right? The digital transformation side of it. Or it's also those companies that, have adapted quickly or had already been thinking about how do we diversify our workforce? How do we diversify our sales team? How do we diversify our leadership? It is a global economy now, right? Most of us, I know Sergio has some family businesses that probably just do local, but he also does some major brands. And, I think we need to start thinking about how do we put strategic people in different countries that can help our revenues grow. Lou's model at GP is great for that, right? It's relatively, you don't have to infrastructure with large office buildings, putting huge HR departments. You essentially find the right talent that understands how to work, as that sort of lone man or on a small team, and report back to a US company or a Western European company, and how to help grow from that perspective. So really those are the kind of two areas that we've seen the biggest growth on, in terms of really, and our side of it is really, how do you find that right talent? Even though there's a lot of people applying out there that are out of work, every company is still looking for someone that is pretty specific. And I think you really need to be able to, differentiate between those people that are going to make an impact. And then how do you speak to those people? How do you get them involved? How do you get them excited about your company? And as we started this whole conversation, culture, what are you doing in this time? How do you expand that across the world for your company and make an impact?
Really good points. We've actually almost come to the end. We've only got a couple minutes left, so I'd like to just kind of go around the room, maybe 30 seconds each. We did start with Lou's slide from Mark Cuban on culture and keeping culture in mind, and most of the people on the call here around the world are in the C-suite. And so what advice do you have for those of us in the C-suite in terms of kind of next steps, whether we're growing the business? We want to continue to grow, right? So what kind of guidance would you give given the kind of uncertainty of the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months going forward? Sergio, what would your advice be? How are you seeing it?
Well, the companies that I talk to, unfortunately, are in the food and retail industry mostly,
Wow.
and the hotel business. So they're really struggling. But going back a little bit, I think the biggest competition is within, and that's I've always believed that you should focus on the company's strengths, and from those company strengths, if try to improve on them. Whatever weaknesses you can detect, how can you change it to or lower it and have more strengths in the company? So the competition is within. Focus on what you do well.
Got it. Great. Now, Matt, what do you think? What would your advice be to the C-suite at this point?
I think it's really about being real internally with your team, making sure they understand the strategy going forward. They understand that everybody is probably struggling a little bit every day. So you gotta be that person that's going to lead them out of it. And as everybody's talked about, it's time to kind of think about your culture of your company, make sure it's the guidelines are there, and look for ways to adapt. I think the biggest thing is, you know, we can't change the way the wind blows, but, you know, we have to adjust how the sails are, right? It's the only way we get to where we're going. So that's the biggest thing, adapt.
That makes sense. And I heard communication in there as well. Lou, why don't you take us home? What final advice do you have for the C-suite? What should they be thinking about?
I personally think you have to be thinking about how you build your business as if this isn't going away, or as if this is going to come back. Like, how do you take this bad situation, everything we're going through, to put together a strategy and operations and processes that'll help you survive and grow and thrive if this doesn't change? Like, the new world order is, we've got to keep distancing, we've got to create creative ways to do our business. And I think, you know, that's a real thought, in that, you know, we don't know if it's going to go away or come back in the fall or come back next spring or whatever. And do we need to kind of go back to social distancing and closing things down? And you want your business to be open. So how do you design your business to do that if you can?
That makes a lot of sense. Really want to thank you, Lou, Matt, and Sergio, for your leadership, for your knowledge, and for sharing. They're always available to you, our members around the world. You know, if you can't find them in the directory, please send an email to info@globalchamber.org, and we'll find a way to connect up so that you can get their expertise. And overall, the reason why we're here is, under normal times, we all know that when you're doing global business, there's a lot to think about. There's a lot of things that we know and we don't know. And so the global tribe, the global chamber, is here in normal times. Now, in unusual times, unprecedented times, it's not a time to go back into your shell. It's a time to reach out to experts like what we've shown today, and who have shared with you just a bit of their knowledge. Talk to them, talk to the other experts in Global Chamber. Now is the time to engage and to talk. Yes, virtually, probably not in person necessarily, but I think, as all three speakers talked about, people around the world are starting to adjust to that already. We're already starting to do things like, you know, Zoom and other calls, hiring and doing mergers and acquisitions we heard earlier today. So get out, reach out, and don't hide in a shell somewhere, because now is the time to engage. Thank you again for everybody. Thank you to all of you who joined us today. And remember that we do this almost every day in terms of some sort of an expertise knowledge. And our members, you know, when you add all of the things that they're doing like this, it's multiple times a day with lots of expertise and lots of knowledge. So if it's not the warm introductions that you're tapping into at Global Chamber, definitely tap into the virtual opportunities, the education, the training, and our members to help you navigate the next steps that largely are unknown, but we want you to be successful. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
all.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Thank you.